Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Morning Breath Livestream. My name is Jeremy Tennell. I am your host, systems designer, and coherence coach. It's great to have you all here with me this morning. This is week 4, day 17. And today we are going to be discussing what we call the pause. Pause is that moment between stimulus and response. It is a foundational part of self-regulation, which is the theme we are exploring this week. The space between what happens and what we do next. Most of us allow our emotions and our initial thoughts and the reactions that come out of those to choose our response for us. But the reality is there is no space between stimulus and response when we allow that to happen, which means that there is no choice. The pause is not dramatic and it is not long. Sometimes it's just a breath, but it's the difference between reaction and a response to pattern and possibility. The pause is where your agency lives. Here's the truth for most of us that we don't like to really think about. Pause doesn't come naturally. When activation happens, your system speeds up, your thoughts accelerate, your body shifts, your attention narrows, and your brain releases peptides, little protein chains that begin to move through your bloodstream and connect with your cells in receptors and communicate to your entire body a frequency in which you need to vibrate. Your cells receive this information and they literally change their vibrational frequency. And you move from stimulus to response before you, the you that can choose something differently, even has a moment to think about it. And in that state, the pause itself, if you were to engage in it, would feel wrong because your emotions have already been set up. That pause can feel like losing control or giving up ground. It can feel like being weak, falling behind. So instead, we allow the reaction to run its course. We move faster towards automatic and patterned effects. We speak without giving thought to our words. We act without considering our deeds. But without pause, we are not choosing. We are not the sovereign operators of this body that we live within. We are allowing ingrained patterns and programs that have developed over our lifetime to protect us and to ensure that we don't get harmed to run their course and choose for us. Here's an example. You receive a message, short, direct, no context, and it says, you need to come into work today, or you didn't put gas in my car, or maybe it says, you were late to the meeting today. Now, immediately, you feel something shift. Your brain begins to do what your brain does. It interprets and protects. Tension hits your body. Assumption begins to run through your mind, and interpretations begin to flow before you even given a moment. So without pausing, you respond, quick, defensive, certain. Later, you realize you maybe misunderstood the tone, or you escalated the situation unnecessarily, or more than likely, you created friction that didn't need to exist, or perhaps you just didn't give it another thought, and you wonder why the relationships in your life are under tension, or your boss is always on you, or your family has a hard time relating to you. That moment didn't need to be a confrontation. It needed to be a pause. When we don't pause, we reinforce old patterns and programs that may not serve us any longer. We misread situations and we escalate unnecessarily. We often repeat harm, not always intentionally and not always dramatically, but perhaps consistently. The consequences in our relationships can determine if that's true or not for us. All we need to do is take an inventory. Most of the consequences in our lives don't come from what they come from how quickly we responded to it. The pause creates space in our system, and space changes what is possible. In that space, we can begin to ask, what am I feeling right now? What am I reacting to exactly? Is this situation how I'm interpreting it, or is this situation really happening? Without space, those questions never get asked because there's no time to ask them. From a systems perspective, the pause is an insertion point, a leverage point into a feedback loop. Without the pause, we get signal, pattern, response. But when we learn to engage and we use the pause between stimulus and response, we get signal, pause, evaluation response. That small insertion changes the entire system dynamic around us. It slows the reactionary dynamic and turns it into a feedback loop. It allows new information to enter, and it creates the possibility for a different outcome. Over time, repeated pauses can begin to reshape old patterns and programs in our lives. And they reduce the reactivity around us, and they increase the coherence in relationships and cognition and in our personal space. But only if the pause is practiced. Self-regulation is not about controlling every response. It's about creating enough space to see what is happening before we react. The pause is the first active step in self-regulation, but it requires something most of us avoid: sitting with the discomfort of not immediately reacting. Next time something comes into your inbox or perhaps your news feed or maybe a text message, and you feel that rise of emotional response, I want you to just take a moment to notice it. Just feel what's happening. And then, if you're able, pause and ask a question. Self-inquire. Why am I feeling this? Well, because, hold on, what's really happening here? Well, this is what's happening. 1 second, keep bringing yourself back to the pause. Today, we're not talking about creating perfect moments, but we are talking about noticing. Where could I have paused? But I didn't, because awareness of activation shows you the moment you're in. The pause allows you to work with it. At some point today, I want you to take your journals and I want you to explore a couple of questions. In what situations do I react the fastest without pause? And expand that. Not just situations, but what about platforms? Is it person-to-person conversation? Is it a specific social media platform you're on? Is it a text message or email that you respond to without thinking? And then I want you to explore, what does it feel like in my body when I'm about to respond without pause? Okay, let's transition into our breath work today. And as a quick reminder, we do breath work on a daily basis for a couple of reasons. The first is because it's practice. It allows us to engage all the principles that we're talking about here. We engage pause. We engage self-inquiry. We engage inventory. And the second is because a vast amount of research, which is part of what I'm working on in my dissertation, has been going into how heart rate variability, the space in between our heart beats, has a vast amount of information that talks about the connection between the cognitive center, the logical cognitive center of our brain, and the emotional cognitive center of our heart, and the intuitive cognitive center of our guts. And when those are aligned, because we intentionally align them, we become what is called coherent in our heart rate variability. With practice, you can move into that coherent state very fast. If you haven't figured it out yet, all we're talking about in the Morning Breath live stream is practice. How to practice pause, how to practice responsibility, how to practice breath and cultivate coherence. Practice is the key. These are tools. And for what is coming for all of us in the years to come with the rise of AI and the changing landscape of our world, it is vitally important that we as human beings begin to practice what it is to elevate ourselves into a place in which we are not the reactive monkeys that we have always been. How do we pause? How do we engage with feedback loops that are all around us, which is what an algorithm is. An algorithm is a feedback loop. It's a feedback loop that is asking you constant questions behind that social media feed. What do you like? What are you interested in? What do you not like? What makes you tick? What gets a reaction out of you? And it feeds you information based off of that feedback loop. And what are you doing on the other end? Are you cultivating a feedback loop, or are you creating a reactionary loop? Like, subscribe. I'm going to comment. We're living in a world in which the hijacking of our autonomic nervous system is becoming increasingly problematic, from social media platforms to cable news networks to the way that those things are being manipulated by people in power and positions of authority. How do you become a person who can navigate that chaos? You do it by practicing. You do it not by reacting, but by coming to the pause. So let's take 5 minutes this morning and let's engage with our breath and let's practice. Here we go. We're going to target our heart So I'm going to place my hand over my heart. And you know what? I'm going to place my hand over my gut region as well. And I'm going to breathe in 2 breaths, big breaths. I'm going to inhale and I'm going to exhale all my breath. Again, inhale, exhale all your breath. Okay. And inhale for 5 seconds. Exhale through your mouth. Inhale, exhale through your mouth. Soften your forehead, soften your gaze, soften your jaw, soften your shoulders. Ready? Cultivate positive emotional feelings in your heart. I create a gratitude list in my mind as I go. Thankful to be here. Thankful for this morning. I am thankful for the sunrise. Allow it to spiral outwards. You get distracted, come back to your breath and your gratitude. Stay with it and your gratitude. Let your heart fill with it. Return to this space with 2 deep breaths. Inhale, exhale through your mouth again, and exhale through your mouth. Go out today, experience life as it is, and pause. Use your breath. Engage with your breath in that moment in which stimulus happens, and you need to create a pause between reaction. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 5:30.